Yo, check it out. We're going to start chapter 13. This is going to go quick. It's going to be in a day. You're going to have to do some notes, write this outline down. On the next slide, I'm going to finish up 13.1, the North's economy, and there's some things that you'll write down there as well. So this should be very quick. We don't have much time left. We got to get to the Civil War, which I think you'll like, and our lit blocks. So here's the story. Around the 1860s, you got to know that the North produces two-thirds of all manufactured goods. And this goes without saying. If you need to pause the video at any time to write down some notes, do it, but it should go quick. But the North produced two-thirds of all manufactured goods, and that obviously has to do with their geography, as you know, and their climate. Okay. In terms of railroads, I'm going to pop open a map here real quick. You can clearly see that the majority of the railroads are up here in the North and the Midwest. This would continue to be the case throughout the Civil War, which would greatly impact the South's success or lack thereof in the war. Railroads. Here's what you got to know about the railroads. In 1840, there was about 3,000 miles of rail, and in 1860, there was 31,000 miles of railroad. Again, most of it's in the North, so that would be a big difference maker, not only in terms of price of goods and all that, but it was a game changer in terms of moving things as well, people and goods. Railroads, what did they increase? The railroads increased settlement, as you can see here, and industry of the Midwest. Those are your two write-ins there. This is a no-brainer. If you can move goods and you can move people quickly, obviously that's going to have an impact on the size of cities, and there's going to be a greater need for goods and food. So with that comes greater settlement and greater industry, a need to produce things. Communication increased is your next fact. So I'm going to pop open this man right here. This is Samuel Morse. I'm going to write his name down for you. This should maybe ring a bell if you know anything about names, because Samuel Morse would create the Morse code, which you can see here is his telegraph. And this greatly increased the ability to send messages and communicate from north to south, east to west. And what this did was it put the Pony Express out of business. Okay, so the word right here, that's going to be your fill-in, is the telegraph. That's this little guy right here. So it put the Pony Express out of business. Pony Express didn't last very long anyways. It was pretty much done in the 1860s to 1861, especially in the West, where there maybe not have been as many telegraph wires and such. Okay, let's move on to the next slide here. We've got about 2 more points. Got some pictures here for you to spice it up. But we're going to talk about agriculture. You should know that agriculture wasn't a big deal in the North. It was mostly in the South. But the first point to drive home here is the following. Few settlers at first would go out to the Great Plains, where there was actual land to grab and get for pretty much nothing. They had the wooden plow only at the time, and the wooden plow simply would not break the soil. It was called sod. Later on, you would learn maybe about sod busters. These would become the name of the farmers who broke the sod, right? In places like South Dakota, Missouri, Iowa, etc. But the wooden plows would break. The sod was just too hard. I can tell you firsthand that the ground is hard as a rock out there in South Dakota. So there were some inventions that would change things. And in 1837, John Deere would invent the steel plow, this guy right here. A simple steel blade would cut through that soil quite easily, and it would impact the size of farms and the number of people that would obviously move this way out west to go and, increase agriculture and make a living for themselves. The second invention was the Cyrus McCormick Reaper, as you can see right here. Simple machine pulled by a horse would chop down the wheat at a much faster rate than these sickle reapers, which a guy would hold, and it usually has a big old like arm like this, very sharp. It was used as weapons in riots and stuff in the early times, but way faster, as you can obviously tell. Another one was the thresher, and you see these sometimes, these machines, they look like threshery machines. They're pretty cool. And if I could pull up my picture, you'd know what a thresher looks like right there. Okay, obviously this machine could separate the wheat from the stalk, or actually the grain from the stalk, at a much quicker rate than a person could by hand. All right. The last final point here is to note that the reaper and the thresher would help increase the planting of wheat, which wasn't planted very often at high rates back in the 1840s and 50s. This made growing wheat more profitable, and it would definitely help us become the breadbasket of the world, boys and girls. The whole Midwest, Great Plains area especially, that's the breadbasket of the entire world because of all the wheat that they grow there. It's a perfect spot. Last point to drive home. Despite all the agricultural success in the regions and all these inventions, the North would still rely on factories and industry. That is it. Peace out.